Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Yinning at Life podcast. I'm your host, Kimberley Roberts of SolefulYin, and I'm here to dish out all the ways that you can create that Yinning at Life vibe. So, welcome. It's been a hot minute since I've been here. In fact, I haven't been here since April, and that's a story. So, in today's episode, I want to talk about trusting your gut, your intuition, and what happens when we do and what happens when we don't. And that has to tie in with why I haven't been here since April. So grab a cup of tea or a jug of water, whatever you got, blanket, cozy it up, and let's get down to it, shall we? So, as I said before, I haven't been here since April. That was the last time I recorded an episode. Well, here's the thing. I didn't trust my gut. So when I started this podcast, I was so gung-ho about it. I just couldn't wait to talk about all the things. Because if there's one thing that I've learned about myself is that I am way better at talking than I am at writing. And so I was really excited. And I had lots of people listening to the podcast, and I had lots of things to talk about. And then one of my podcast episodes hit number 1 rank in, health and wellness category. And I kind of freaked out, to be honest with you. I thought, oh my God, first of all, how did that even happen? And then secondly, it was like, well, now what? How do I match up to that? And so my mind started to spiral. I started going in all different directions, thinking, oh my God, I can't do this again. Now no one's going to listen to me. I don't even know what to talk about. And every time I would think about something that I wanted to talk about, I would just hear this little inner annoying fucking voice in my head going, you can't talk about that. That's silly. People will think you're stupid. Don't do it. And so I let the fear take over. And that's the thing what happens. When we don't trust our gut, we're basically saying, well, we'd rather trust the fear that comes up. And here's the thing about fear. We humans experience fear of some kind almost every single day. That's the thing. We can be afraid of making a decision about this. Maybe we're afraid to talk to our boss. Maybe we're afraid to talk to our partner. Maybe we're running our own business and we're afraid to make a decision about something. Whatever it is. I don't want to do this diet because I'm afraid that this might happen, or I don't want to have that really tough conversation with my child or my spouse or my friend, whatever it is, right? So we allow the fear to ride over what our gut, what our intuition, that little tiny part of our solar plexus in the pit of our belly, you know what I'm talking about, right? When you think about something and all of a sudden it's you get that sinking feeling in your stomach, oh yeah, I don't know about that. That's the thing that happens. That's your gut telling you no, or maybe it's the other way. You get all the butterflies in your belly and you're like, oh my God, yes, absolutely. And you roll with it, right? So that's trusting your gut. That's listening to your gut. And most of the time we don't connect the gut with the brain, right? They work together. And fear is a normal part of our life. Now, there's different kinds of fear. There's literal fear, oh my God, I'm in danger. There's a bear standing in front of me. He looks like I could be his next meal. Yeah, I'm scared. I better know what I need to do to get out of this situation. Versus the fear of I want to ask that person out on a date, but no, better not, because what if that person says no? Then I'm going to look like a complete fool. I'm going to look like an idiot. No, I just won't. So you talk yourself out, right? But you're never listening to what the gut is saying. So one thing that I want to tell you, a little hack that I use when it comes time to making decisions in my life. So let's face it, we're making decisions all the time. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to pause, like literally for a hot second. I will pause and I will just ask myself, how do I feel about this decision? How do I feel about this decision? And I'll ask it like 3 times. I'll say, how do I feel about this decision? And then I'll get quiet and I'll get still and I'll close my eyes and I'll just tune into my body. Because here's the thing, your body is always communicating with you 24/7, 365. Absolutely, every single day, your body is always speaking to you. It's just that we're often not listening because we're not in tune, we're not in touch. And when people ask me, oh, you know what, like I can't get in tune, I can't get in touch, I can't trust my gut, I don't know, I don't even understand what it's saying to me. You know what? If you pause and you notice how you feel, it's a pretty good indicator. So you can ask yourself, like, how do I feel about this decision? Pause for a moment and notice, what is the reaction in your gut? Do you get butterflies? Do you get little sprinkles? Do you get like that sinking, like pit of your belly kind of like feeling? Do you get angry? Do you get excited? Like, how do you feel? What emotions come up for you? Because I'll tell you that the emotions are a huge indicator of whether or not the decision that you're trying to make is the right one that's aligned to where you want to go. But we often don't listen to the gut. What we often listen to is our ego mind, right? That primal part of our brain, we listen to that. And I can tell you, I'm putting my hand up here. Your girl is saying she has listened to her ego a lot, like way too often. And it always comes back to bite you in the butt. Absolutely, 100% when you listen to your ego. And if you don't know, I have tons of episodes that I already recorded from the past where I talk about the ego mind and stuff like that. But I want to just reiterate what your ego is actually there for. Protection. That's it. It's just there to protect you if you're in danger, right? Like that flight or fright system, the sympathetic state has to be invoked when we're in danger. And we have to know how to turn that on. So that's our ego. That's our primal brain that comes in and says, okay, danger, danger, let's get the heck out of here, right? But that same part of your primal brain, that same part comes up a lot when you're making decisions that are nowhere near something that could be life-threatening. You're talking about maybe asking your boss for a raise. Maybe you're looking to apply for a different job. Maybe you want to start a new workout regime, or you want to take a new course, or like you want to ask that person out on a date, like I said before. Your primal brain will often kick in because this is all new stuff, right? And your brain is going, whoa, wait a minute, like back down here. What are we talking about here? What do you mean you want to ask that person out on a date? Are you crazy? No freaking way are we doing that. And instead of listening to your belly, which speaks to your heart, you're listening to your head instead. And guess what? You're totally bypassing listening to your gut. But when you can pause, you just pause. I'm not talking about pausing for like 5-10 minutes here. I'm talking about pausing for like a hot 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, okay? you will get indication pretty darn quick. I will tell you that. If you really tune in, you will get your download. And I'll tell you, when you pause, there is so much power in pausing, because when you pause and you listen inward, that inner guidance system that we have, that's our intuition, right? That's like, you decide, you get in your car one day and you're going to go somewhere and you're like, you know what? I think I need to go here today. I don't know why, but I think I'm going to go to that coffee shop. I could go to this other one, but you know what? Something's telling me, let's go here today. So you go there, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You run into somebody that you knew, you start talking about something. Next thing you know, you're coming up with a business idea together, you're collaborating, and you're like, you get back in your car after, and you're like, whoa, what would have happened if I didn't trust my gut in that situation? I would have never ran into that person. We would have never collaborated. We would have come up with the idea for this business, blah, 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 blah. And guess what? None of it would be happening. And I can tell you firsthand the number of times in my life where I have not trusted my gut. Like, so many times that, like, I don't know, I can't even count. But back to April, when I had that #1 podcast episode and I went on freak mode, it was my mind telling me, there's no way you're going to be able to pull that off again. So you might as well just stop now before you really make an ass out of yourself and embarrass yourself. So just give it up. And you know what? I listened to the fear, obviously, because it is now October and I'm just back on the podcast now. So you know what? Like, we're all human. We have human experiences. Sometimes we make decisions that are really in best alignment, and sometimes, guess what? We don't. But there's one thing that I've kind of learned on this journey of life. It's always one step where you're healing, and there's always another step where you're growing. And so you know how you walk, right? Step, 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 step. It's the same thing in this journey of life, right? There's no quote unquote final destination where we're getting anywhere. We're just taking a step and then the next step and then the next step. And the steps are always leading us somewhere else, right? It's when we decide not to step anymore, which is what I did with the podcast. I was kind of like, okay, no, I'm in freak out mode. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to be able to put up decent quality podcasts. So I'm just, you know what? I'm just going to stop it because I don't want to make a fool out of myself. And I'll tell you that yesterday, I was sitting there and I was meditating, and I thought to myself, I don't know where I heard this from, but all I heard was, what's your superpower, Kim? What is your superpower? And I was like, my voice. Like, I'll tell you, I'm pretty shitty at writing. I'm not the greatest writer, but I'm really good at talking. Like, I have a really, I don't know, it's just easier for me to articulate stuff and to talk about things than it is about writing it out. I will tell you, I often paralyze, or I get into like paralysis mode when I have to write content, especially when I'm writing like on social media, like Instagram or Facebook or something like that. I will often get into this paralysis mode where if I were to talk, I could talk all day long. My God, like I could just keep going and going and going. So I realized that my superpower is my voice. And I was like, okay, well, I'm hearing that. Well, what's the best way for me to use that superpower? And all of a sudden I heard, well, duh, Kim, your podcast. Like, what else? And I was like, oh, the podcast. You mean the podcast that I kind of forgot about? And I could hear on the one shoulder of me going, yeah, that podcast. And then on the other shoulder, I could hear, Are you kidding me? We're not starting that up again. You're going to look like a complete idiot. Well, you know what? I actually looked on Spotify. I can't even count on both hands here the number of podcasts that I looked at briefly where I could see that people haven't posted anything in like months on end. So I was like, you know what? How do I feel about starting up this podcast again? So what did I do? I paused and I asked myself, I closed my eyes, I took a deep breath, and I went, what if we start this podcast again? How do we feel about that? And I paused and I listened. I listened to what my body said. There was some fear. Absolutely, there was fear. There were sprinkles. There were butterflies. There was excitement. But yeah, there was fear. So I thought, okay, well, let's break this down. Because we know we're getting the sprinkles. We're getting the butterflies. That's a good sign. So let's break down the fear part, because that's what's holding us back, right? And that's the thing in life. Fear is what always holds us back. That is our most primal emotion that we live with, is fear. So I was like, okay, well, what are we afraid of? And I sat there and I had to think for a hot second. I was like, what am I afraid of? Starting it again? Why are we afraid of starting it again? Well, we don't know how people will respond. Does it matter how people will respond? People will either want to listen and go, woohoo, she's back. Or some people might decide, no, she's not my jam, and move on. Is either okay? Yeah. Would anything bad happen if I started the podcast again? No. Could I lose some followers that I had before? Maybe. But maybe I'd gain new followers. Oh, well, how do we feel about that? Well, that's pretty freaking cool. I like to talk. I got lots of things to talk about. I know there's lots of things that I can talk about that can provide a lot of value to a lot of people. Okay. And what's our mission with our business? Which, by the way, if you're new on my podcast, I'm a Yin Yoga teacher and a reflexology therapist. So I play with feet and I stretch out bodies. It's basically what I do. But there's so much more to that. And there's lots of podcast episodes that I talk about that. Okay. So you can always go and dive into those. So I was like, my mission is to take thousands to transformation in their body, in their mind, and in their souls. And I'll tell you, for 57 years old, I have a lot that I've learned in this thing called life. And I'll tell you that a lot of what I've learned in this thing called life has only really been in, I would say, the last 3 years of my own personal journey. So I was like, I went back to, okay, is there anything else we're afraid of here? I'm like, the technology? And then I started to laugh. Are you kidding me? We have got the technology down pat. We've even got the Beats headphones on today. Yeah. So, okay. Anything else we're afraid of? What would happen if nobody listened to this podcast episode? Oh, well. Has that happened in the past? No. What if we start up a new Instagram account for our podcast and we could share it through there and have more people listen? Oh, how do we feel about that? Well, that's kind of cool. Are we afraid? No. Okay, so let's recap. Is there anything that we're actually really, truly afraid of? Nope. All right. And here I am right now recording this podcast episode. But you see, when we don't take a moment to pause, and I really want to emphasize in your life, whenever you're not sure about making a decision, the power of your pause is so important because literally your body is going to tell you what to do. It really will. But if you're like running around like a chicken with its head cut off, or you're like on the, the hamster wheel going round and round and around, nothing's going to happen there. You got to pause, because I'll tell you, when you pause and you listen to whatever your body tells you, not your head, not your mind, your body, what does your body do? Do you freeze up? Do you get tense? Do you feel like you're going to get sick to your stomach? Like, those are clear signs of like, ooh, yeah, no, that probably wouldn't be the best route to go. But if you get the sprinkles and you get the butterflies and you get the goosebumps, it's like, ooh, yeah, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Let's roll with this. We never know 100% how anything in life is going to roll. There is no such thing as a 100% guarantee. So you just do the best that you can with the tools that you got in the moment, which is what my dad used to tell me all the time. And I'd be like, huh? He's like, you do the best that you can, kiddo, with the tools that you got in the moment. And I'm like, he goes, you make the best decisions that you can with the information that you got at the time. But you see, back when I was a kid, we sure as hell didn't talk about intuition, inner guidance, feelings, emotions, the ego mind. Are you kidding me? We didn't talk about anything like that. This was like, you just rolled with it. But now we have so much more insight about how our mind works and how our mind works with our body. And if you don't know, they're connected. Your mind and your body are so connected. And so I'll give you a perfect example of that. Say you pick up the phone, you see somebody calling you, and you're like, hello? And you get the worst news, like someone's been in an accident and you have to go to the hospital right away. Next thing you know, where do you feel it? What happens in your body? You contract, your stomach gets queasy, you feel that drop, that sink in your stomach, right? You might start to shiver, your breath might get really shallow, you might start to feel like like the anxiety is brewing, anxiety attack, a panic attack comes up, something like that. Your mind goes racing in 50,000 different directions of, oh my God, what's going on? What's going to happen? Da, 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 da. The same thing works when you pause for a moment and you ask yourself, how do I really feel about the decision that I want to make? How does it feel in my body? And when we get really good news, right? It's like somebody tells you, oh my God, guess what just happened for you? Da, 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 da. What? Are you serious? Oh my God, I got that promotion? Really? Are you sure it was me? Yes, it's you. Oh my God, I wanted that job. I so wanted that job. Oh my God, I so wanted that job. And then you just notice, right? How does your stomach feel? The butterflies, the goosebumps, the sprinkles, it's all happening, right? It works both ways because your mind is always in connection with your body. And if you don't realize this, we have a second brain that lives right in our gut, in our solar plexus, and it's always talking to the one that's up in the head. So there's this constant dialogue that's always happening here. It's just that it's our human nature to react quickly, right? I want an answer now. But the thing is that when we don't pause, we can potentially lose out on some pretty big ass transformations or opportunities that could happen for us. That's the thing. When you pause, because you get clear, And there is nothing more important than clarity. Because when you're really clear about something, then guess what? It's like all the ducks start to line up all in one beautiful row with a big bow attached to the front and the end, right? But when we don't pause, we don't trust our gut, we don't listen to it, we often make hasty decisions that we all know we've done before. Let's face it, put your hand up if you have, because I certainly have. When we do that, there's always the remorse and the regret and the, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Well, you can't go back and you can't change it now. So all you can do is move forward, right? You just move forward and you keep going and you remind yourself, yeah, okay, next time we're going to pause. We're just going to take a hot second to pause, tune into our body. This is what trusting your intuition, trusting your guidance is. And I will tell you that for me, one of the things that's really helped me get more in tune with myself is my Yin Yoga practice. Because guess what? You're hanging out in a Yin pose. And if you're not familiar with Yin Yoga, it's a little bit of a different style of yoga. So it's more passive poses that you hold. You're usually either sitting, lying down, maybe you're on your side, on your back. You're propped up in some way so that your body is supported in a long held stretch. And you're stretching out connective tissue and fascial layers, but you're also moving energy around and clearing out emotional and energetic and mental and physical blockages that your body is holding on to. Okay. So Yin Yoga can be quite uncomfortable, especially if you're in a pose where it's like, oh my God, like that part of my body that we're actually targeting right now is really tight. So this is intense. This is where our breath comes in. We start to use the breath. We start to breathe really deep. And when we do, there's this beautiful, magical thing that happens. We get to be more in tune with ourselves, how we're responding, how we're feeling. Because sometimes emotions are coming up, right? Along with the discomfort of being in the pose for like 3, 4, 5 minutes. But life has uncomfortable moments. Life has challenges. Life's us, right? And we have to learn how to manage all of that. And I'll tell you that my Yin practice is what has helped me manage that, has helped me manage the discomfort. And it's helped me to pause more. Because I'm pausing in the pose, my body and my mind are getting used to being still. It doesn't feel so foreign all the time. And it's like, I don't know. When I'm in Yin, it's like I'm in a completely different dimension. Like, yeah, there could be a really intense stretch happening, but I know that there's so much more that's happening. I know energetically that I'm, clearing out stuff that my body's been holding on to that just really isn't like serving me at all, right? And it's giving me an opportunity to contemplate and to reflect. And sometimes I may not even be necessarily thinking about anything specific, but all of a sudden I'll be in a pose and next thing I know, the thought pops in and it's like, why don't I contemplate that for a minute and see how I feel about it? And so Yin has really helped me in being able to make better decisions because it gives me patience. And I'll tell you, your girl here, patience has not been one of my stronger suits. I tend to overreact very quickly. This is another reason why I love Yin so much, because it forces me to pause. And when I pause, I can reflect with a little bit more of a clear head, right? Instead of like popping the lid off my head and setting myself on fire. So it's a great tool to help me. And the more that I pause in these poses, then the more that I'm in tune with myself. And the more I'm in tune with myself, then the more I can be in tune with my inner guidance system that's always talking to me, right? Like, think of your inner guidance system as kind of like a GPS for you, right? And everybody has their own custom GPS telling you, do this, do that. I'm sure lots of you out there have had times where it's like, yeah, I feel like doing this, and you have no idea why. And then all of a sudden something incredible happens out of that journey. You trusted your gut, right? What it was telling you to do. And, you know, like the same thing can happen where you're like, yeah, maybe I should take this road. And then you decide, you know what? I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know why, but it just doesn't feel right. And then you find out later on, like there was a massive accident on that street and you could have been part of it and you avoided it. And it's like sometimes we don't necessarily know why our guidance system is telling us to do this or to go there. But I'll tell you that the universe always is on your side. And so when you're listening to that inner guidance system, it means you trust yourself. When you trust yourself, that means you trust the universe, or whatever you want to call it, a higher power, spirit, angels, God, whatever. I call it universe, higher self, right? Like there's always a source higher than us that's guiding us. And when we don't trust our gut, it means we don't trust ourselves. And we're here to trust ourselves. And we're here to yin the heck out of life, which is why I called this podcast the Yinning at Life vibe. Because you know what? You're here to do some pretty ass, big, bold things with your life. And when you learn to pause and trust your gut more, I'll tell you, you'll get so much further ahead. Your life will move in directions that you never even thought possible. And you'll be literally pinching yourself every day going, what, really? Like, this is my life? Like, holy crap, I really am living my best life. But you got to learn to pause. You got to learn to pause. So, if you want more information on learning how to pause, please feel free to check out my online yoga and well-being platform. I have tons of practices to help you get into the vibe of pausing and tuning inwards. So I'm going to link all of that in the show notes for you. And you'll be seeing me or hearing me, depending on which platform you are listening to my podcast on, every week. Because you know what? This is what feels aligned for me, is talking. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode. Namaste.